Welcome to the Greatness Garage Podcast, the place where small businesses get big answers. I'm your host, Brad Borkus, founder of Epitome Coaching and Consulting, and this is the Greatness Garage.
Welcome, everyone, back to the garage. We're so happy to have you. I've got Chris Hawley here, the owner of Craftwell Architecture from Fargo, North Dakota. Amazing guy, great insights. And Chris, we're so thankful to have you here.
Well, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, go ahead and tell the garage a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Chris Hawley. I am the founding principal of Craftwell Architecture and Construction. We're a 22-person design build firm based out of Fargo, North Dakota. I would put us in the bucket of a regional firm that kind of spans multi-states. Home base is always Fargo, but doing projects kind of all over the upper Midwest from a construction perspective. And then on the design front, the architecture piece of what we do, we're kind of all over the country right now doing a number of different size projects, different scale. I would say the thing that we hang our hat on is that we're a boutique firm. So we don't do a lot of monster state government work. We don't do schools. We do a lot of private development. So whether that's a beautiful single family home or a small business or a multifamily kind of mixed use project or a restaurant, that's kind of our little bucket. I would say our focus is sort of experience based. So it's not just about providing a box for people to use. It's kind of providing an environment. And I would say, our name kind of feeds into that a little bit. It's more about the kind of delicate nature of building buildings and building the built environment. And that's our focus.
That's cool. And I'll tell everybody too, if you go out to Craftwell and check out every so often, he'll show some drawings and stuff like that, and the way that the drawings go to the real, it's very cool to watch and see that. And not only that, I got to be honest, I drool quite a bit because some of those drawings in them homes are gorgeous. And I love how too, you said it well, the way that you guys work with some of the interiors, especially older buildings that have some history. You do the research. You find out what is the story of this building, what are the bricks saying and stuff like that or whatever. And it really some really cool stuff. So everybody go out there and check that out. And it's at craftwell.com.
Craftwell? Yep, craftwell.com. WeCraftwell.com. Yep.
I love it. So, all right. So we're going to jump into this. The first question is, I wish I would have, right? I wish I would have done. I wish I would have not have done. It's just a fun one where we can always kind of share the reflections and the lessons and the scars that we have. So though all the rest of you in the garage don't have to have quite so many of them, or you can maybe learn from something here. So Chris, take it away.
Yeah, thanks. The wish I would have thing is really interesting. I'm really happy that we're in the spot that we're in. At the end of the day, I will say that I wish I would have talked to more people, right? I think I would. I was just talking with my wife here this weekend about, I wish I would have had the opportunity to ask more questions of my grandparents, which is kind of an interesting place to start. In addition to that, I wish I had the opportunity and maybe a platform to ask more questions of those who came before me, whether that was grandparents or another professional who maybe took a similar path. I started my firm really early. I think I was 32 years old when I ventured out on my own. That's pretty early for an architect. Honestly, I think most of the time they kind of wait until they're in their late 30s or maybe even early 40s where they maybe have a few more notches under their belt. And part of that was necessitated, and I had kind of grown, and I had worked really hard to get to that spot, and I was very eager, and that was great. I was a little naive, I think, to understand kind of what the fallout of owning a business is all about, and understanding how. And I think our business is really unique. Architecture businesses are really unique. You're sort of trying to sell. You're trying to sell creativity, you're trying to sell knowledge, you're trying to sell, kind of aspirational things that, some people like care about that stuff, and then there are other people that don't. And we try to do work for the ones who care about that stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that's an interesting thing. I had some really great mentors along the way.
Yeah.
I think maybe even some of them didn't really know the full picture of what it meant to, maybe take a boutique firm to the next level.
Yeah.
And I think, one of the things that I maybe stumbled upon later in life was a few folks that maybe helped me understand what the next step is. And so I've kind of implemented this like kind of pay it forward attitude. So like I
Yeah.
always look
Cool.
for the guy
Yep.
who's one step ahead of me, and we're friends.
Yep.
And then the idea is that I pass that along to the next person in line. And that's been a thing for me. I'm heavily involved in the NDSU kind of network, and
Yep.
there's these, NDSU is this great place where there's incredible architects all over the world. It's sort of this little secret, and some of them I get to tap on the shoulder and say, "Hey, we're a growing firm. We're doing this kind of work. I see that you are 40 years ahead of me.
Hmm.
What? Tell me a little bit about between now and then, what happened." And I think that's the kind of stuff I'm just starting to do now,
Yep.
and I think I wish I would have done it. I wish I would have done more of that sooner and asked more questions earlier.
So, so I love this, and this is the part for the greatness garages that you're going to get. That this is where kind of some of the magic shows up. So, a lot of times, if we knew then what we knew now, right? What do you think back then? Because you all might be in the same spot, right? So, what do you think held you back from asking those questions, from reaching out, from doing those things to leverage that immense amount of wealth of knowledge that had gone before you?
I mean, I just don't think I knew enough, and I don't know that I just did not
Yep.
have enough experience. And so that's the catch 22 here, right? Is like
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
need enough experience to understand what questions to ask.
Yeah.
But, I mean, at some point, like if you're experienced, you kind of know what you're doing, right? And
Yeah.
so like, there is this sort of like sink or swim, throw you off the end of the dock, and you're either willing to fight for it or not. There have been a number of moments in my career where I've not wanted to, continue on.
Hmm.
Like I mean,
Hmm.
many times. Like
Yeah.
I have one story that I tell a lot, and I think it's actually the birth of the firm in a lot of ways, which is this is my first this is my first 3 months of practice on my own. I have my own business, working out of my house.
Yeah.
And I had a really big project that was kind of a big deal. It was a pretty large commission for a client that probably opened some doors that are bigger and wider than most doors. And so I remember working my tail off all day long, trying to run a business, trying to kind of keep things afloat. And then I got home at like 8 o'clock that night, knew that I had a meeting the next day with this client, and I had to produce. So in addition to running the business, I actually had to be the architect.
Right.
And so at 8 o'clock at night, I'm drawing from 8 o'clock at night until 8 o'clock the next morning for 12 hours straight in preparation for that meeting. And I remember saying to myself at like 2 o'clock in the morning, like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Maybe you should reschedule this meeting. Maybe you should think about like what kind of practice and what kind of life you want to live. And I pushed through. I got ready for that meeting, and in some ways, like in one of the most published projects of the firm's kind of career and life.
Hmm.
And had I not done that, that particular person could have moved on,
Yeah.
could have hired somebody else. We could have not grown from
Yeah.
there, and I could still be working from my house. And you fast forward 14 years later, we're a 22-person firm. We're doing projects all over. I mean, like I think about that moment all the time where it's like, do you want to quit or do you
Hmm.
want to fight?
Yeah.
And that little fight thing, that's kind of the thing. And I've had a lot of moments like that.
Yeah.
And I just kind of go, well, let's fight for a while, and then maybe I get to take a break.
Yeah.
Maybe I get to take a nap the next day. and I did,
Yeah.
and I did that for probably 4 years. I did a lot of all-nighters. I did a lot of
Yeah.
that, and I honestly worked. I remember telling myself, like, I'm gonna work my tail off and save enough money so that I can hire somebody to help me.
Yeah.
And that somebody is now my partner, and he's an
That's
owner in
awesome.
the firm, and he's my first hire, and
Nice
I'm
job.
I'm kind of proud of that.
Right?
I'm
I was
really
gonna.
proud of that.
This hiring thing's easy, right?
Right.
So
Um,
you know what I love about that too is that God, do we all struggle with that? Like, am I giving too much? Am I like, we look for balance and all this struggle that we challenge, and when is too much and when's it not enough? And do I give up right before the next? And it's really difficult. And I think for us um to bring some humanity to that struggle and just say, yeah, it's okay. And again, we don't all, every situation has a little bit of its own nuances, and you kind of got to evaluate for yourself. But there's got to be this, if you want to make it through, there's got to be this underlying commitment to going a little farther than makes sense.
mhm.
And it's tough. And once you can kind of be comfortable with that and be okay with that, then other things start to kind of fall into place a little, don't they? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I also remember at that moment too, I've got two kids, they're two little girls, and they depend on you. And
Yep.
my wife had a lot more money than I did at that moment in my life, and she bet on me. I had a couple years worth of work at that point, but
Yep.
she gave me $10,000
That's great.
14 years ago, basically, to start this thing, to say, hey, when you run out of that, I don't know that we got a lot after that. And
Yep.
so, I mean, maybe the best ROI and that in our family's history for sure.
Yeah.
But like that was, and I felt like a responsibility to all of those folks to do that. So
Yeah, well, and what I love about this too, and you may have heard this said, but like a lot is, your spouse is the number one choice you'll make in
mhm,
life, right?
mhm,
And I think not only just it's cool to hear you be able to look back and really have some appreciation for that that faith that they have in your crazy ideas to go do what and to take what kind of risk, right? And that beautiful faith that exists there. And I think for the greatest garagers, take a pause and look around for the people that are believing in you right now, and just give them extra thanks along the way. Because sometimes we wait, it takes a while and we kind of forget, like, oh, we've been so focused on building. Stop,
mhm.
pause, and thank around, because there's a lot of people around that do that, aren't there? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really fortunate. I went, so I graduated from NDSU, went to Minneapolis, and I thought I was going to chase the big dream of a big firm.
Yeah.
And worked for a 240 person firm based out of Minneapolis in California. And I thought, man, this is exactly where I want to be. What I found out that it was the absolute opposite of what I really
Mm,
wanted in life. And I was always kind of like small. At the end of the day, what I found out is that I wanted to be part of a, small thing that was doing great things instead of a big thing where, you just kind of got lost. So
yeah.
I got lost there for a little while before I
Can
came
you
back.
remember the moment when it slapped you and went, whoa, whoa, this isn't right? Like,
Well, it was pretty immediate, and honestly, it was a hard. I worked there for a very brief period of time, and I could see that the ending wasn't that great.
yeah.
Like I was like, okay, fast forward 2 years from now, 4 years from now, I don't think I can do this. And
Mhm.
I was given an opportunity to come back to North Dakota and work for some folks that I had known and done some work for previously, and it's the greatest decision I've ever made is to move back to Fargo. And to be honest, like had I not done that, we would not have the success that we have today. Like I think it's interesting. I had a small group of people that supported kind of who I was, what I was doing, and they just kept investing more and more and more in me. And eventually, I mean, that's where the growth happened.
Yeah.
It was never really about, chasing money. It was really about chasing folks that really cared for you and wanted to see you succeed. And I mean, when people give you those opportunities, you kind of gotta wake up
Yeah.
and realize that those are the opportunities that are
Yep.
important to grab hold of. And I was fortunate. I think, I mean, a lot of my friends, like so. 4 years later, there was a recession, and a lot of
Yeah.
my architecture friends in Minneapolis were looking for jobs and have never come back to the profession. And here I am, very fortunate to have a firm that's had a lot of success. And
Yeah.
I don't think I would have had that in Minneapolis. I maybe
Yeah.
would have climbed the ladder a little bit, but
Yeah.
it was interesting. I just was kind of like, this doesn't feel like a reflection of who I am and what I'm about. So that was interesting. Like, and it was sad for me. Like,
Yeah.
I kind of felt like a failure because
Yep.
I was like, well, I want to be a big shot in a big shot office. And
Yeah.
at the end of
Yeah.
the day, I realized wasn't worth the juice wasn't worth the squeeze.
Well,
So
yeah, and you know what too, also there's this growth that exists in all of us when certain things, monetary gains, notoriety, that really, let's say, kind of feeds the ego, right? And I mean it, and that is not, it's such a bad thing, but it's something we think we should be. And
mhm.
then we kind of get that chance to pause and listen, whether it be to others, whether it be people that came in front of us, to be able to sit there and say, okay, what is it that fills the soul? That really makes me say,
Mhm.
this is what I love doing
For
each and
sure.
every day, right? And it takes time, and I think that's a part too where that's when you see, those of us have been through it enough. It says it's not about the money, and that's where you start getting like these are these nuggets, these relationships you build. You mentioned that all of a sudden, as all of the money now that can flow away, that's what you'll remember at the end, right? That's the part that you want to be of. Yeah.
I mean, I think what's interesting for me is that because I'm a North Dakota kid, those who are from here wanted to make sure that I was successful, right? Like
Mm,
there were other North
yep.
Dakota. I mean, it was a really interesting thing. There are days where I kind of go, man, this place, I'd like to live somewhere else. I'd like to do something else. I'm complaining about all the things, but then
Yeah.
I stop and think about like, wow, you know what? You don't have a lot to complain about because there's you have this support system of folks
Yeah.
that I've got a lot of clients who don't think twice about who they're going to call when they're doing a project, right? Like
Yep.
there's no interview. There's just like, hey, this guy has done a ton of work for me in the past. They do a really nice job, and it's time to do the next thing with them. So,
Yeah.
um, and that takes a long time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. That's a beauty of the North Dakota culture, and that's kind of taking care of each other's. Yeah. So I
Yep.
agree 100%. That's awesome. So the next one, I love this. When we created this segment, it was just a joy for me to do this because the stories I'd heard in all my coaching and advising and consulting and stuff like that, there's just amazing stories, and it makes you chuckle, right? So, Chris, am so excited to hear what your version is. You guys aren't gonna believe this. Take it away.
You aren't going to believe this. Well, I think I touched a little bit on it. Like I think about the evolution of things, right? And there are the moments where you kind of go, you're going to go, this is either going to be successful or this is not going to be
Hmm.
successful.
Hmm.
And I remember making the leap, leaving a firm that I had worked for a long period of time. My wife borrowing me the $10,000. I think that is definitely one moment. I also think about the idea of going from that one person to four people, and then from four people to the big leap that we're at today. I remember, I mean, there's this kind of delayed gratification relative to all of this, where I was willing to, barely pay myself for a
Yeah.
while. And I would, and the thing that's really interesting to me, I think, is that I was willing, and I still think this way, and this is 14 years later.
Hmm.
I save, and this is just a different approach to like money maybe than
Sure.
other business owners. I I've kind of got to a point where it's not really about how much I can make or how much I can spend on whatever or do whatever. And I think about how I can use resources to make everybody's life easier, right?
Hmm.
Like, and it's just it's mindset. And I was working really hard so that I could buy my time back.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I still think about how even today. as you build a company, if you can start thinking about how you can buy your time back and give opportunity to the people that want to do the thing that you're doing,
Yeah.
it actually opens up doors. And then all of a sudden you are available to do other things. And it just, the more you do that and the more you think about that and the easier life gets for everybody, the business part of this kind of solves itself at the end of the
Mhm.
day.
Yep.
And that, I mean, I kind of thought about that a lot early on, but what's funny is whenever I get to a weird juncture in this, I don't really think about, how do I, I'm thinking about how I can distribute resources and funds in a way for kind of quality of life stuff more than
Yep.
anything. Because I think, and everyone talks about office culture, they talk about whatever, and I think, I mean, if you've got somebody doing something they shouldn't be doing, well, maybe you need to figure something out,
Yeah.
something different for them. Or maybe they're, you're making their life painful, well, maybe there's a different way to look at this.
Yep.
I mean, that's kind of how I think about a lot of it. And what's funny is that those are tough moments because it's like, well, I don't really, like, really, do I have to do that? But what
Mhm.
happens is that those things pay you back,
Yeah.
tenfold. And that's not right away. That's usually, 2 years later or whatever.
Yep.
And those are the kinds of things that I think about a lot, are those like key moments where I'm like, hey, I remember, my
Yeah.
first year of business having, I don't remember what it was. I mean, maybe it was like $150,000 in the bank or something.
Yep. Yep.
And I just said, well, I've got a lot of projects coming in, and I'm going to pay everybody, these two people that I'm going to hire, I'm going to pay more than I ever made anywhere in my life.
Yep.
And I made that leap. And I mean, at the end of the day, greatest decision I've ever
Yep.
made.
Yep.
One of the, kind of the top 10 list, that's in
Yep.
the top 10 list of like, that was the key that unlocked the big firm or the medium-sized firm sort of mentality.
Yep.
And
Yep.
those are like stressful moments, but
Mhm.
they're hard ones and they're kind of gut-wrenching. But like, man, if you can kind of have a little bit of vision and a little bit of fight after that, I think you'll be
Yeah.
fine.
And you know what I love to hear is, is everyone's listening to him talk, listen to how it's anchored in principle. It's anchored in an idea that says the more I give and invest into the people that I have around me, the more that I can quote buy back my freedom, buy back the ability to choose. And kind of with the alignment method thing that I teach, what you are really doing is he's creating a couple by doing those things, he's creating a couple key things. One, you're creating delegation. So by investing in them, you're asking them to take on some of that responsibility. You're opening that opportunity. Well, at the same time that they take on that opportunity, they become more empowered, right? And so you're creating this really strong culture because you are singularly focused and understand the value of is the more that I give away, right? And we're investing like this, but I give away, the more it comes back fold on me.
For
And
sure.
and 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 that and you're not doing it from a gamble. You're not putting, $1 million on black, right? You are going it through a concerted daily investable principle. And you're investing not just in their bank accounts, but you're investing in their minds and hearts.
Mhm.
And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's a quality of life thing here too. Like, I mean, our company has a lot of flex time. There's a lot of bonusing opportunities.
Yeah.
There's, all these things, and all of that is sort of a reflection of how, when I have worked for people, the things that drove me the most crazy are the things that I'm trying to fix in our
Yeah.
own firm. And
Yeah.
I go, man, if you're trying to live a life and there's no flexibility within it, that's a little painful.
Yeah.
And I try to respect people's lives and time. It's interesting. The other thing that I've learned a lot in the last 20 plus years is that not everybody wants to do your job, which I always thought,
Right.
like,
Yep.
really? Like, you don't want my job. And then, when I think about it, I'm like, well, no, I get it. Like maybe, it's, in some ways, there are days where it's kind of
And I
miserable,
volunteered to do this. Wait a second.
right? Exactly. Some people just like want to be a part of something like a collective
Yeah.
that and do their thing really, really well, but they don't want to have that, maybe don't want to have the head seat at the
Yep.
table. And that was always interesting to me because I always kind of thought everybody did, and
Yep.
because I know I
Because
kind
I
of
did. Yep.
but you have to, my partner Mike and I, we talk a lot about this is a sports thing, but I always think about a business like the 1990s Bulls teams, the
Ooh,
Chicago
nice.
Bulls teams. And
Yep.
it's interesting, like maybe in the beginning you've got, you can't have five Michael Jordans on the court.
No.
And you got to have a Scotty, and you got to have a Dennis Rodman, you got to have
Gotta have a
one.
Dennis Rodman.
And we've got some of those. Like we
Yeah.
got, when I think about the recipe for success, right? I think about how you have a variety of skill sets that all fill in the gaps for everybody else on that
Yep.
team. And there are the key players that are like, man, if they're gone, that's hard. But you've got all these other folks that are just like, man, they're like the glue to the
Yep.
other two, and
Yep.
they do the things that the other two maybe can't do on a day-to-day basis or shouldn't be doing on a day-to-day basis. And so
Yep.
I think about that a lot. And it's been interesting that I look around the room and I look around our office and I'm like, man, we start to shape a team. And
Yep.
you kind of have some off years, you lose a couple people, or
Sure.
people move
Yep.
on or whatever, and then you kind of say, well, okay, we're in a rebuilding mode. um, what's interesting now for me though is like I've kind of gone from I like to pretend like I'm not a player anymore, but I still draw like crazy and I still do a lot of design work, but
Yep.
I have moved. I'm definitely shifting into more of the Phil Jackson role where
Yeah.
I'm kind of the coach, and that has not been my um, I was slow to get there.
Yep.
But I think what's interesting, and I think, Mike, my partner, is, he's definitely shares that role with me. He probably does certain things better than I do, and I do other things better than he does. And, I
Good
mean, but
partnership. Yeah.
we complement each other really, really well. And that's interesting for me. Like, and then what I realize is that every business kind of needs to have somebody. I've often looked around the room and said, well, who's going to do that? Right? Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it's usually some leadership thing. I'm like, God dang it, I wish I didn't have to do that. And I'm like looking around. Hopefully I can find somebody to volunteer, and
They're all
nobody.
looking back at you.
Yeah, and then I'm like, I guess it's me, or and that's part of this that I don't think anybody really ever understands fully until they're in that seat. And
Yep.
there's a lot of moments where it's like, man, I've got to deal with all of this stuff, because otherwise it's just not going to get done. And there's and some of those things can fester, right? Like they can turn into something
Yeah.
terrible over time. And so we try to be proactive as we can. I don't really let things sit for very long. So
Yeah, and it is. It's tough. Like when you're looking through it, and they're saying, "I'm not afraid of the things I know. I'm not afraid of the things I don't know. I'm actually afraid of the things I don't know. I don't know." And we said that's what keeps us up at night, right? Is like,
for
what am
sure.
I missing? What is the thing that might be showing up or might be going on, or even to sometimes working with the beautiful humans inside our organizations and their unique floral of personalities and interwovenness, and try to go on, okay, how do I get this conflict or whatever this to
Mhm.
work out so that it's professionally beneficial, even if it's not, they don't go and uh, hang out outside of work. How do we get this to have a place where it can fruit for all of us? Yeah. So
Yeah, I mean that's the thing that nobody tells you is that, regardless of what business you're in the HR business. Uh, you
absolutely
know,
right. Yep.
it's just the way that it is. And we're in a really fussy industry service-based
Yep.
thing where like every hour we spend, should be
Yep.
billable, if you
Yep.
in concept. And what you're doing should be of value to the person that you're serving.
Yep.
And that's a tricky thing, and that's a very sensitive thing that also assumes that when you're doing your thing, that you're really good at it, and other people see the value in it.
Yeah.
Uh, and so
Yeah.
that's been an interesting, sort of, I could probably write a book just about that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, the value of creating value. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Because it's you look at that, and even in when you grow, people grow in coaching stuff like that too, and you see that where if you can't create that value in that one insight and that ability to be there and see what others don't, you're gonna have to spend the time offline on your own dime to be able to do that, to catch that up, yeah, and what a unique way to look at that from a productivity and from a value creation standpoint. So hmm.
Well, I'm really fortunate. When I came back from Minneapolis, the reason I ultimately came back from Minneapolis is I was asked to do a tree house
Mm-hmm.
for a family that does some really cool projects. And the irony of that is, like, I actually, you're a young knucklehead. You think you know everything because you just graduated from architecture school.
Yep.
But the reality is you're just beginning. And
Yep.
the experience, like, I was very fortunate where I got to kind of hone my skills, sharpen my knife, for 2.5 years for this family doing a project that is really incredible. Like, I mean, we're talking storybook kind of stuff.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, you could see the completion of, you could see the A to Z of a
Yep.
project, and you could see what it meant to do something for a client, and the back and forth collaborative nature of what that is like, I mean, that experience is extremely valuable because then it shapes how you treat people for the rest of your
Yeah.
life. And so I'm really fortunate. Like, I built I don't know if back from where we're from, I built a
Hmm.
cabin for my mom
Yep.
when I was in architecture school for $40,000 on Rice Lake. And, that little project, what's interesting to me is, like, we're doing $60 million projects right now, like, kind of all over the place. But what's interesting is that the start of this
Yeah.
started with $40,000 cabins
Yep.
and tree houses and, little
And the
projects,
same concepts, I'm guaranteed, yeah, right? Are still, yeah.
all the same.
Oh, that's so
Yep.
cool.
Yeah, so that, it's the scale of doing good work. It
Hmm.
doesn't really matter.
Yep.
And I just think it's so interesting. Everyone's like, well, this is just a little project. Little projects can be just as good as, if not better than, the big projects. So,
Exactly. Right. Understand that the texture to it. Yeah. That's very cool.
yeah.
So the last segment that we have is intentional language. And this can be a quote. This can be, words of wisdom that you tend to live by. This can be a mantra. This can kind of be, something you have poster on the wall, hang in there with a cat, what is the aligned language that you use to kind of guide you and run your business?
Well, so 5, 6 years ago, our business has changed names a number of times in the last 14 years. It was, Chris Hawley Architects, it was CHA, and then it turned into Craftwell. And that was really interesting. There was a moment when it became not about an individual person. It became about being a group, right? Like, it's a group
Mm,
of people that are all working towards something collaboratively. And we changed our name to Craftwell. And Craftwell, for us, we spent a lot of time thinking about this and how, maybe embedded in some of that language was a little bit about who we are and what we do. And the idea of, like, being careful about doing something is, this craft piece, putting things together in kind of a really delicate way. That's what we're all about. The well piece, to that language is, kind of the depth of knowledge that comes with doing that kind of
yeah.
work, and then also doing it at a high level. And so, that part of, like, why did we rebrand? Well, because I sort of felt like we were lying to people about who we are and what we were doing until we started, um, you know, putting on the things, or actually, having an outward expression of
Yep.
what we're all about. And so, branding piece of that was really important to Mike and I in terms of what this is all about. I mean, I think there are a lot of architects in the world. There are a lot of people that do what I do, right? And do what
Yep.
our firm does. the idea is that you're differentiating yourself from the others in some way, shape, or form. And I think, we're kind of craftsmen, artists, definitely have maybe a little bit slightly different, approach to things. Like I think our stuff is maybe a little more delicate, a little more has a little bit more of a soul to it. We're not just
Hmm.
solving we're not just solving functional requirements. We're actually, there's a little bit of poetics to what we do.
Yep,
So,
I can see that.
you
Breathing
know,
some life into it almost. Yeah. Yeah.
yep, yep. And I think there's some special things where you're like, wow, that's very articulate, that's very sensitive, that's very thoughtful.
Hmm.
That kind of approach to what we do and how we do it is really important. I mean, one of the things that we talk about is kind of elevating the ordinary, right? Like we're always, even
Yeah.
if I have a project that hits my desk that is kind of ordinary, and the client maybe
Yep.
isn't looking for much and like to solve for something, we
Yep.
try to give it, we try to bring it a few ticks up, even if it's
Yep.
something we're not gonna, maybe advertise a ton or, maybe not gonna win an award or
Yep.
whatever.
Yep.
And, one of the things I say all the time is like when I'm like, we're getting ready to issue a project and it's like, it better reach a certain level. Otherwise, I'm just like, it shouldn't leave our office, to be
Yep.
honest. The work shouldn't. And so one of the,
That's
one
cool.
of the things that you'll hear me say in the office a lot, and my friends quote me in saying this is okay sucks. Because okay is just like
Yep.
it's kind of depressing, to be
Yep.
honest. And
There's a little bit of apathy that shows up in okay, doesn't it? Yep.
yeah, you're just kind of like, well, I guess I'm going to settle on this thing. And, to be honest, sometimes when you settle on something, you don't get a call back the next time,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
you don't get the opportunity to do the next thing that maybe somebody was planning to do, which would be aspirational, right? Like I've had some interesting things where I'm given a lot of little projects that build up to something that's incredible.
Yeah.
And, like the careful nature of what we're doing is, and it's really delicate, it's really sensitive. And, so I try to instill that
Hmm.
in kind of everybody within our office.
What I love that I'm hearing here is your your thought of your branding and the language that goes within to it is also then the way that you are able to express and model who it is you want to be and who you expect your people to be and what you expect your firm to be. That goes back into the name title of the firm, that comes back into the people, that says you are craft, we are Craftwell type of thing, where each of those understandings. And I love the which makes sense in a very articulate firm, that you're able to articulate, to be able to kind of define that nuance that shows up for everybody. This is how we are and this is who we are. So that's pretty cool.
Hmm. I mean, we've known each other a long time. We're recovering Presbyterians, and
Right.
I mean, we've known each other since grade school. But I think one of the things that I think about a lot, and going back to what I said about getting the opportunity to talk to my grandparents more,
Mm,
especially now that I'm older and think about all these things, is I think about my grandma, I think about my mom, and my mom is an upholsterer, she's a furniture maker, she's like, I mean, we come from a craft background.
yeah.
And I just remember like her tearing apart things that were done just fine because she
Hmm.
wasn't proud of what she was doing, or she
Yeah.
did not feel like she did her best job. And I think about that all the time. And I had like, our family, we used to make our own clothes,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
was kind of a badge of honor in our family to say, hey, we're craftspeople that care about what we're making for others. And
Yeah.
I think it's so interesting to think back about being a little kid and not registering 100% at that moment, but then you come full circle 30 plus years later and you're like, wow, that's exactly what I'm doing every
Well,
day.
and you know what I love about that is it just so much echoes the saying that says your kids may not listen to what you say, but they will do what you do. And so, well, you had such a beautiful model in your mom to say this is what it means to honor fabric, to honor the people that you're giving. My aunts are both quilters, And it's not about some blanket or it's about the love that goes into
Yeah.
each square and how I thought of this square for you. And
Mhm.
I could hear that, I could see that. And, really too, um, in the challenge of building a business, as you put that together and intentionally kind of put to each one, sit with each piece or, it's quilt what it, to really deliver something that's pretty special. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. You're shaped in so many different ways that you just had no idea that we're going to
Yeah.
have a really big impact in your life. And I've been really fortunate. My partner Mike, his family I think has a similar sensitivity to like things they own, the things they buy, the things they make. And I mean, for them, it's like food, right? Like,
Yeah.
the really well made food with, and ingredients and all of those things. I mean, they think about that in the exact same way that we think about architecture. And then my mom thinks about making things out of fabric. And, that's an artist kind of
Yeah.
embedded, into the kind of an ordinary functional thing that everybody needs. Like, everybody needs
Yeah.
shelter, but how do you elevate shelter to the next level? And that's, I mean, that's really our job.
Yeah. And I think just the way that you see beyond the initial space of it, right? Like you see what's in it, like what it means this is where that family will share some of their best moments of their life. And like, what a cool thing for you to be able to do to get that place and they go, oh my God, if it wasn't created in this way, if it didn't feel this warmth, if it didn't feel like home in this way or whatever, that's pretty cool, man. That's
Yeah,
pretty
I mean,
cool.
you're bottling up an experience and you're bottling up memories for
Yeah.
families. And I mean that they're going to, what we do becomes a backdrop for their life for years to come. I mean, that's the idea. And that's a big responsibility, and sometimes it's stressful. Like you're like, man, you got to get this right, because if they've got to stare at this for the next 60
Right.
years,
Yep.
I
Yep.
mean, there's a lot of legacy projects that we've been a part of that I'm like, wow, this is, you got to get it right. And if it doesn't feel right, you better take 2 steps back
Yep.
and make a correction so that we move forward in the right way.
If it's okay, it sucks, huh? I like that one. That's really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Chris, thank you so much for the insight and the texture you've brought to the Greatness Garage today. I think everybody, you've got a real gem here and really listen to the way that this reflects back on your own business and the way that he creates some intentionality to not just what he's creating for the client, but what he's creating inside his business. And that time that he takes is tough to balance it, but really understand that that's the way you build an amazing organization like Craftwell. So thank you guys. Greatest Garagers. We will see you again real soon on the next episode. And thank you, Chris. We appreciate you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Remember, action is what makes this information all worth it. If you need help figuring out what that action is, go to callwithbrad.com and we'll get some clarity and help you figure out what that should be.